And welcome everybody to the newest episode of the Amateur Theory Podcast. We're happy to have you with us. We're going to have another excellent show today. We watched the classic Japanese film Battle Royale, so that'll be a very interesting conversation. We also have, as usual, a mix of news stories and good movie-based discussion. And we're actually going to start with an article we all read from The Wrap, talking about the streaming service Peacock. And I thought it was interesting because we talked a decent amount about Quibi on this service or on this podcast. And fun thing about Quibi, so I did the free trial, right? And since they've gone out of business, they just extended my free trial until they close. I got a little email saying that, like, we're not going to charge you anything. Just enjoy it while it lasts.
So have you been a Quibi binging for the past?
I have not looked at it one time, but maybe I'll, because I did like that one movie I saw, the one Quibi movie. So maybe, and I did start another Quibi movie or Quibi show that I quickly stopped watching, but it wasn't that bad. Like it was fine. I just think that it's just not the way I want to watch things.
Yeah, if it had not been on Quibi, would you might have actually finished it?
I mean, yeah, like it was interesting, but part of the problem is just like, especially right now during, whenever you're not going out very often. I'm just like at home anyway. I don't need to watch stuff on my phone, right? I would much rather watch it on my giant TV screen. That is just so much nicer. Anyway, this is going to turn into Quibi again, so we've knocked them.
Smash Quibi for an hour and a half. Come on, man.
Even the NBC Universal CEO is in on it. Like,
it's true.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you guys is that do you agree that Peacock is the opposite of Quibi? And do you think that it is something? Are you interested in it? Do you see it being successful?
Isn't any normal streaming platform the opposite of Quibi? Like everything was like fine and dandy. I thought we had like perfected what streaming was, and then Quibi just came along and tried to shake things up in very odd ways.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I gotta say, I was really skeptical of the idea. I don't like the idea of every network having their own streaming service. That just sounds super obnoxious to me.
Oh yeah, that's
what this is. This is just NBC making their own streaming service, but it's free. It's free.
Really?
And it has ads in it, but it is free. And there is, it's got some big shows. It's going to get The Office soon.
Got The Office.
Yes, shows ever. And then
it's got The Office, period. That's
yeah. No, but it also has 30 Rock in addition to
Parks and Rec. Is that NBC?
I think it might be. They didn't mention it in the article, but that doesn't mean that's not there.
Yeah, I think Parks and Rec is NBC.
Yeah, that's another humongous show. And then also on the they have I'm thinking Dick Wolf's show, but I can't remember what that show is called. The one where it's like dun dun.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I don't know TV shows that well, so I know what The Office is, but that's about it.
Whatever that mystery show that I'm thinking of, which is like one of the most popular shows of all time. I can't believe I can't think of it at the time, but it is one of the most popular TV shows of all time. So that is also huge.
Law and Order.
It's called CSI. It's one of those kind. It's a cop show. It's one of those cop shows.
Yeah, it's Law and Order.
Law and Order. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Law and Order. So it's got a lot of big properties, and so is that. According to this article, it already had millions of downloads. I have Comcast here, and Comcast owns NBC. And along with my internet service, they sent me a streaming thing, kind of like a Roku or a Fire Stick, but it is just for Peacock. It is a box that is a Peacock streaming thing that comes with. I assume it probably also does Netflix. I hope, I did not even bother setting it up because I didn't care. But I have it, and they gave it to me in like a little instructional manual saying like, so now you can stream Peacock with this device we're giving you.
So now you have another thing you can place items on top of.
I don't know. This sounds worryingly like cable and satellite, and I hope not every streaming service gets their own device to plug in, so you can get it. Yeah, I don't know. On one hand, I agree with what the CEO is saying in like the premise, because again, I really felt like the problem with Quibi is that I didn't know any of the shows. Nothing sounded interesting. I mean, it sounds annoying too, but also there just isn't anything there, right? So I mean, yeah, on one hand, you're fixing the problem that I feel like I had with Quibi. But I don't know. I feel like there's kind of like a we're not Quibi, you know, and like that's not even a conversation that the Netflix executives are having, you know. So I mean, like it still seems like maybe kind of an amateur.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So,
but I mean, if The Office might be so big that maybe you could build a streaming service around The Office. That's not like ridiculous to me. Especially, I mean, didn't Disney Plus basically exist because of the Mandalorian? Like so many people got that. I got that because of the Mandalorian. So I think that there is something to be said about just having like a property that's really big, and then the fact that it's free is pretty big too. Like that's just a.
Oh yeah, if it's free, it's one of those like, well, why not? Like
exactly.
kind of things.
That being said, I have not downloaded Peacock. I do not plan to, if I'm being totally honest. It just sounds kind of annoying to me to have to like switch browsers to watch things that I've already seen. I'm not one of those people though that like keep The Office on in the background. Like I've watched.
I don't think any of us are. I haven't watched The Office in like years.
Yeah, same. Like I just if it's on and the only time I ever watch it is when I'm in like a waiting room, and that's like the default thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like The Office is one of those shows that like you're used to.
Yeah, like you're at the dentist
spots. Exactly. So like that's when I'm watching The Office. And to The Office's credit, because it's a very funny show, if it is on in the dentist's office, I will be watching. Like I am paying attention to The Office on screen because it's good for a couple of chuckles. But it's not something that I'm so into that like I'm going to put up space on my hard drive to do whatever Peacock is doing. But I mean, 22 million people, I've already got it. So, maybe it's got legs. I wonder how much it would do though if it started charging.
Yeah, I imagine those numbers would drop maybe just a little. I mean, It's like The Office is good. Like we said, The Office is good, but I don't know if it's that good. Like,
is there a show in existence? I feel like if there is one, it is The Office that could like carry a streaming network on its own without anything else. And I can't think of another show.
Yeah, it's like The Office the most like popular show that people rewatch. I mean, that's just the impression I get, like looking at like memes or Reddit or whatever. But
well, I think that the actual answer to this is that it was The Office, but The Office has been like on Netflix for a really long time.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, and what is this? What is the big new audience for The Office, right? It seems like it's just the same people passing The Office around, being like, yeah, this is a great show. I don't know. I'm not quite sure whether The Office is actually a big, like, money maker or like.
Because it's true. I remember The Office was like the biggest Netflix show. Because The Office was first, and then Friends was second. And obviously those shows were big before Netflix, but it was obvious that they both had a resurgence because of Netflix. It wasn't like there was like this constant demand all the time in the existence of the show. It was popular when it was on TV, kind of had a lull, was on Netflix, became popular again because people rewatched it. I did, like, especially, and I'm bigger into Friends personally than I am into The Office. I like the 90s sitcoms. But I rewatched all of Friends. I saw every single episode when it came on Netflix. But I would not have gone out of my way to do that if it hadn't been on Netflix.
What? You wouldn't have bought all the individual season box sets for Friends? Is that what you're telling me?
But no, it's like I mean, it is very much like a comfort food kind of show, the kind of thing you can just have on, and you know, it can be a little corny sometimes, but it's just kind of, you know, amusing and lighthearted. And but a big part of the reason that I would watch it was not because I was so obsessed with that show, but rather just because it was so convenient that I'm already on Netflix. So like, and I, you know, it's one of those things where like, I don't know if I want to watch some big drama right now. I'll just throw in Friends again. You know, I'm like halfway through it. Like, I'll just keep it going.
Yeah, and actually, I think that is maybe I'm just pulling this kind of out of my ass, but here's the thing: is that it would make sense to me. I don't know if this is actually true, but it would make sense to me if the shows with that maybe don't have the as wide of a viewership, but have fans. Like, you're a fan of that show. I feel like that might be a bigger money draw. I don't know for sure if that's true, but it would make sense to me if it was.
I mean, let's be real. Like, both Friends and The Office have fans. Probably more fanatical and more numerous fans than any of these other more niche shows. Like, I think you're probably thinking of something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like cult following kind of shows, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think that there's plenty of like people who are cult level followers who can quote every episode, and like, no, I think there's plenty of those people, but I just don't think that they are the majority of watchers. I think there's a sizable amount of them, and I think that you probably will pull those people. Will download Peacock for sure. But as far as your more casual kind of like, I like it, but it's not my favorite. I mean, I might be eating my words. I don't know for sure. Maybe Peacock will overshadow Netflix in a year. You know, who's to say?
It'll be the new Disney.
Yeah. But I do think that they did it smart by making it free. I think that was crucial to the numbers that they're saying. Because I think even if this was like $5 for $3 a month, that you would have seen less than half of the downloads than it does now. That's just speculation, but I feel like that's probably the case.
Way to go, Peacock. You did it.
Yep.
Good job. Trophy for you.
But all right, we'll transition into our next discussion topic. And part of the reason so the next discussion topic is going to be just kind of talking about theatrical versus director's cuts of movies. I do want to point out the version of Battle Royale that we watched is a director's cut. And so, you know, let's not talk too much about specifically what that was, because we'll save that for the movie discussion. But that kind of makes it, you know, more prescient that kind of what are your feelings generally on director's cuts? And obviously there's lots of, you know, there's director's cuts, there's extended cuts, there's the
unrated.
Yeah.
Special editions, final cuts. Oh boy, it's a very exciting world, and I'm just so ecstatic about it.
But what are you guys' feelings? Are you usually like? Do you think that's always the definitive version? Do you think that you wait for like a critical consensus? So like, what is the best version? Or do you tend to like one thing over the other?
So, I mean, I like to generally see, I think, what the general consensus is. But I think when it comes to films, the general consensus, I can count on one hand the amount of films that people say like the director's cut is the better version, like always. There's Blade Runner, Kingdom of Heaven, which I've never seen, but another Ridley Scott film. And is there anything else? That's it. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. And I feel like I've seen so many times, even directors say like, oh, like, I just prefer the theatrical version. That's like the actual director's cut. Because half the time they use the word director's cut. It's just a studio kind of gimmick. It's just a different version of the film, but director's cut has some kind of, I don't know, tinge or cred to it. I don't know, some dumb bullshit, but
And I mean, I think the most infamous one by far is Star Wars, right? That original series Star Wars, all the re-releases.
Oh boy.
No one likes them as much. Like, it just has always been the case that everyone thought it was worse, all the changes that they made.
Yeah, well, we come to the problem where I don't necessarily have anything against director's cuts or special editions per se, but you bring up Star Wars, and you get to the point where some films actively erase versions of the film. Like, the big problem with Star Wars is that you can't watch the original theatrical versions. Like, or they've never been, like, officially released. Like, you just can't buy them. Like, it's only the special editions now. So you get to the point where you're actively, like, erasing, like, past history, which people still want, and it becomes a nuisance, like a bother, to the point where fans have made their own, like, have you ever heard of the despecialized versions? Like, fans have, like, gotten, like, different sources of Star Wars and like recreated the original theatrical version in HD. And at that point, it's like, why not just release the movies? People obviously want them. You'll probably make money off of it. So yeah, it's just a sore spot for me when it gets to that point. Like, I don't know why you would do that. Like, because most films, I think, generally, if you buy it, you'll have the original theatrical version, then maybe the director's cut. So you have the choice. Okay, fine with that. But when you have movies like Star Wars or something like Amadeus, you can't buy the original theatrical version on HD as far as I know. There's only the director's cut. And that's a movie where a lot of people prefer the original theatrical version of the film. So I don't know why you wouldn't release it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have some strong feelings on the subject matter.
I think that's fair. I think that so I feel like, so your point that sometimes the director's cut is not really even like an artistic statement from the director, that sometimes it's just like, how can we get fans of this film to buy it again?
Every unrated cut ever.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
So you're right. You're right, and that's a big issue. But I this is when I am most sympathetic of director's cuts. Is when they have created a film. They have a film, and then they put it in front of a test audience, and the test audience doesn't like the ending because it's too depressing, and so they make a happy ending, and then that's the theatrical version. And I am a very pro director's cuts then when we have access to the original vision, I guess, of that film. Because I had only recently seen 28 Days Later, and in the version I rented, it showed the theatrical version of the film, and then after the credits, they showed the ending that the director intended to be there. And
I haven't even seen the director's ending for that. I just know the normal theatrical version.
What I will say is that I felt like the director's ending made a lot more sense in the context of that film. So I respect that. And at the same time, while I'm respecting that, I also just... I like film. I like talking about film. I'm doing this podcast.
You're on the right podcast then, boy.
Yes. But I will say that even though I respect the action of it, the fact of the matter is that I don't always feel like I can be bothered to watch a film with a slightly different thing at some point in it after I've already seen one version of it, you know. So it's like, yeah, I support director's cuts, especially when it comes from the director. But I feel like I have to qualify that, like, at the same time, I'm not so passionate about it that I need to see those films, if that makes sense, you know?
Well, let's say, and this is not just for Adam, you know, how anyone wants to answer. You know, if you have the option to, let's say that there's not like a very strong consensus about which version is better. If you had, this is the first time you've seen it, so this is not rewatching it, but you have the option, you can watch the theatrical cut, you can watch the director's cut. Do you err towards one side typically, or do you think does it really truly not matter to you at all? Like, just give me whatever you got. What are your thoughts?
If I had a choice in the matter and I didn't know anything about the film, I would probably go towards theatrical cut, actually. Just because in my experience, there's so many films where I prefer the original theatrical version over the director's cut. So, and going back to what Adam was saying, like, I can understand like the studio like meddling with the film and kind of like dumbing it down and then releasing like what the true vision was, which is fine. And I think that's like, for example, like Blade Runner, that's the case. And everyone says the director's cut of Blade Runner is the better version. No one says the theatrical version's the best version of that film. And if you do, you're wrong and you need to rethink your life. But then you get to a point where it seems like some directors, at least for some films, don't even know what their vision is. For example, like Apocalypse Now, you have the original theatrical version
and Redux,
the best version. Then you have the Redux, which added like almost an hour to the film, and none of that was necessary. Don't watch that version. But then Francis Ford Coppola again later made his final cut, which is, I guess, his now true vision. But we never needed any of this. The original theatrical version's fine. That's what got the movie famous. That's what everyone saw and loved. You don't need to keep re-releasing the same film over and over again, different versions, when it worked the first time.
I will say that I probably also err towards theatrical cuts generally, but I'm mostly thinking of Lord of the Rings right now. And the Lord of the Rings, I will say, I do not think that the extended cuts are like significantly better. I don't. But because Lord of the Rings are, and this will kind of bleed into our next topic a little bit, but those are movies that I've rewatched many times. It is nice, if I'm already planning on rewatching it, to have another different version to watch. That, like, you know, I like this movie enough that I want to see it multiple viewings. The fact that there is another version that is different than the version I've seen is kind of cool.
Oh, I love the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. But I will say, though, the extended versions are for fans of the movie, I think. If you've never seen Lord of the Rings before, I would recommend watching just the original theatrical versions first.
Same.
But that's like a big enough movie. Like, everyone, like, so many people love that movie that, you know, they want to see more. And the extended versions, like, just give you more of this already fantastic film. So it works in that context. But...
And I mean, like, It could be true for Apocalypse Now. People who like really like that movie. I am of the opinion I've actually never seen the theatrical cut, but I remember the only time I've ever seen it was the Redux, because that's what it was on Netflix.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, man.
I remember thinking that like they could have cut out so many scenes, and I'd have to see the theatrical cut. Maybe I'm not being fair.
The theatrical cut is a masterpiece, like an amazing movie, and Redux just adds so much junk.
But I could see if I watched it that first and I just, you know, was so enamored with it that maybe I might appreciate this extra hour that I haven't seen, you know, on a rewatch. But it would be for a rewatch, not for a first time viewing.
Yeah, I will, and essentially kind of to add to what all of you are saying, when you are forced to cut for like time constraints in order to kind of like, for whatever reason, often the artists, the filmmakers, need to really decide what's really important in their story. And so because of that, I do think that the theatrical cut is often like a leaner, more like focused affair. But yeah, I still, again, I tend to support director cuts because sometimes what gets cut is something that really contributes to how that filmmaker was seeing the meaning in their story. Like it was contributing to some kind of understanding of what they were doing, and so I mean, can't get mad at that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some films where you can make an argument for like both cases, like the original version and the special edition, which I could do that for Battle Royale, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, generally, I think like what Adam said, that's the reason why I prefer theatrical cuts generally, because they're just like leaner. There's no fluff, and I think pacing is a very important aspect for most movies. You don't want like everything to be like a 3-hour long like rambling mess that goes nowhere. Like, no, yeah, like conciseness, like focus. I really appreciate that in art.
Yeah, and I guess let's wrap this discussion up just because I want to touch on unrated versions, because I kind of want to dispel what a lot of people, because what you think unrated versions are and what they actually are not the same. I think a lot of people, when they see the unrated version of a movie, in their mind, they're thinking more nudity, more maybe like swearing, maybe more violence, like something that would, that unrated is like really means something.
So many comedies bank on this. They need you to believe this is true.
Yeah, that's almost never the case. What unrated means is it means that it was not released in theaters and therefore was not given a rating because they added like an extra 2 minutes of like a talking scene or something, like some totally superfluous extra little bits, and then technically it's unrated. Like it's literally one of those things.
Maybe you get like 2 extra frames of booby in one shot, but
I won't say it never happens.
2 extra frames, they make all the difference.
But it rarely is it's much spicier than the original. Like it's rarely the case.
Yeah,
and you're not remember the NC-17 version. That's not what it means.
Yeah, in the late 2000s, I swear, just every single movie or like comedy at least had the unrated version. Like hell, could you even find the theatrical version? Because in every store I went to, it was always unrated.
And I mean, and I always thought that unrated meant that. Like, I always thought that it meant like this was like the more, vulgar version of the movie. But it's just a marketing tactic, people. Like, don't be fooled.
Yeah.
That being said, it's true. I don't see it as often anymore. I think partly because DVDs are just a dying medium. So I think
everything's on streaming now.
Yeah. So, and usually streaming, you'll get like theatrical cuts.
Yeah.
They don't need a reason to sell it to you because you're already paying. So I guess a lot of these things have kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. For better or for worse.
Yeah. What we're basically saying is that George Lucas sucks.
All right. And then the next discussion topic is also related to the movie we're watching, because I believe all 3 of us have seen this Battle Royale before. This is not our first viewing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's true for me.
Okay. So this is it's a rewatch for all of us. And so the question is, generally, how do you feel about rewatching movies? Is it something that you think you engage in often, or is it something you don't generally like to do? Kind of what are your thoughts?
So,
depends on the film. I mean, there are movies that I have seen before and I've been very impressed by, that I've only seen once, and I'm not necessarily rushing out to see them again, but they still stick in my mind. For example, that Kurosawa film, like Ron. I've only seen it once. Amazing film. It's a masterpiece. But that's not a movie I'm trying to rewatch all the time because it's like 3 hours long and it's also depressing as hell. So
yeah, I think there are some movies that lend themselves to a little bit more than others. And length is not the only Like, I think that is a factor, but it's not the only factor.
Yeah, because
Because
there
Lord
are
of the
some long
Rings-
movies that can kind
I've
of
seen
just
Lord
like
of the Rings
zoom by.
so many times, and usually when I rewatch it, I'm rewatching the extended version, the trilogy. I'm making like a day of watching Lord of the Rings, and I've done that many, many times. And there is just something about those movies in particular that make rewatching more fun than I don't know if I could explain. Like, it's actually hard for me to articulate why that movie is good to rewatch. But
I do think nostalgia plays a factor. I think movies that you've grown up with and say maybe watched a lot when you were younger are kind of easier to rewatch again when you're an adult because you kind of have that, yeah, I'll say like nostalgic kind of, not necessarily sentimental, but it's kind of like a comfort, you know, like this is something that you know and just you're experiencing it again. It feels similar. Yeah,
You know
like
what?
yeah, a
That's a
comfort.
point. Because I'm thinking that, like, and this might be controversial, I don't know. I liked all the new Star Wars movies. All of them. I liked them. Shoot me. I don't know. I enjoyed every single one of those. But
Ooh, this episode's gonna go in a weird direction, guys. We just changed course. Shenanigans have arisen.
I recognize that they're flawed movies, but I enjoyed them all. It was fun for me. I saw them all in theaters. I really like Star Wars, so and I enjoyed each watch. I could criticize them, like I said, I recognize the flaws, and there's things that I would have done differently. But I enjoyed each as an individual movie. I enjoyed each one.
I actually didn't dislike them either. I enjoyed them when I saw them too. Well, most of them. Let's say that.
But what I'll say is that if you ask me right now, do you want to rewatch any of these new Star Wars films? I'd say like no. I'm not feeling it. Like, I don't really want to see it again. But if you ask me, do you want to watch Episode 5, which I've seen so many times already, I'd be like, it could be fun. Yeah, let's watch it. And like I mean, I think it's fair to say that the original trilogy is just they're better movies. I think that's uncontroversial. But I don't know if that you talking about the nostalgia bit actually might play into that, because that is something. It's movies I grew up with, these original trilogies, and I liked them as a kid, and I've remained liking them, and so that might play a part into why I am much more ready to rewatch those movies.
So, I think that there's a little caveat to what I'm about to say, because I'm hearing your nostalgic discussion, and I feel like that maybe I would put a different term to it, but at the same time I feel like I can't give a convincing argument because all of the movies I'm going to talk about are like totally nostalgic. Totally movies that
yeah, they're all films like you grew up with and watched as a kid.
Right. And so I feel like I'm undermining my own point. But the way that I kind of see it is I think that I've kind of noticed a bit of a pattern with movies that I like to rewatch. So I'm a huge fan of Pixar films, and I'm usually happy to rewatch almost any of them. Okay. And like, for example, my favorite is WALL-E. Okay, and that came out at a time when I was pretty young, and so I was, I mean, sure, the nostalgia's there. Okay, you're right, but I think that the other name I would put to why I like to rewatch some films is that I associate a certain strong positive emotion with that film. And I think that maybe part of what is nostalgia is really just the fact that maybe at certain times when I was young, certain things just hit me really, really hard. And so I have more of those kind of like really strong kind of emotional moments with certain films. But for example, like Lord of the Rings, I can point out just moments in Lord of the Rings that is like a high that I would like to chase again. You know, I can pick out Pixar moments, okay, that are like that. Like I remember feeling that way, and I bet I could feel that way again if I watched this movie. And there aren't a whole bunch of movies that actually can pull that off, but there are some, you know. And I think that's kind of the distinguishing factor. Like, what movie do I want to rewatch? If I can pinpoint, oh, I want to feel that way again, then that I want to watch that movie. So that's how I kind of see it.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense, because those movies, I mean, you watch them when they're young and they definitely make an impact. Like, I certainly remember watching like Fellowship of the Ring for the first time and just having my mind absolutely blown away. Like, I'd never seen anything like that before. And same with WALL-E. When I saw WALL-E, I loved it. It's best Pixar movie, objectively. If you think differently, you're wrong. You have to rethink your life.
I can respect some responses, but yes, WALL-E is primo.
Yeah, but yeah, also
favorite.
Outside of the
Gonna drop that bomb. We can move fast.
Sorry?
I said WALL-E used to be my favorite.
Whoa.
Oh wait, hold on. What's yours now?
Coco.
Oh, Coco. Okay, I've actually
fair enough.
seen that one yet.
Fair. Okay.
I haven't seen
That
Coco
was
yet.
good.
Sorry, guys. But yeah,
Now's
but
the
even
time.
even outside of the like childhood nostalgia, for lack of a better word, factor, some movies just do lend themselves to rewatches better than others, I think. For example, a movie that I first saw as a teenager, really liked, and still really do like, is Dazed and Confused. And I think, like, I rewatched that again like a couple weeks ago. I still regularly watch that movie. I love it. And I think
I
for
just
that
say, I
movie
remember coming, because we were buddies in high school, and I would I would come to Jail's house all the time to hang out. I'd be like, "What'd you do today?" Watch Dazed and Confused again. Like, that was it was that, and then you'd listen to Disintegration by The Cure. It was like a daily activity where it was like those two things, and that went on for like a year.
Oh, fun times. Yeah. But I think for Dazed and Confused, at least for that movie, what helps is that, like, there's no plot to that movie. The entire movie is just people hanging out and talking. And I think that can kind of lend itself to rewatchability, because it's not like the movie, you're never like, oh, what's going to happen next? What's the big, like, plot thing? It's just, oh, we're just chilling. It's nice. Oh, all right, cool.
Yeah, because there is movies that I really liked when I was younger, like really, really liked, that I am not terribly interested in rewatching as much as other movies. So, like, I actually am not big into rewatching the Disney movies. And, like, just some of those Disney movies I really, really liked. But it is just not something that sounds that appealing to me to watch now. And there are other movies that I remember thinking, like I still think Wolf on Wall Street, and that was not when I was a kid. I was older, obviously, but that was a movie that I remember leaving the theater thinking, like, that might have been the best movie I've ever seen in my life. And, like, I still will swear up and down by that movie. I've never seen it again since I saw it in theaters. And I don't really have a strong desire to, even though, I will tell you, like, that movie is amazing. But then
well, it's just like a dense film, right? Like, it's so long,
Yeah.
and just like so much goes on. Well, this is
Exactly.
I do want to rewatch it again. It's been forever since I've seen it, so.
But a movie I love to rewatch is The Ring. That is just that is so easy for me to watch, and like such like a habitual thing. Even as I feel like every time I watch it, I think the movie is a little bit worse. I think it just doesn't age as well, and like I've seen better movies, but I don't care. Like, I don't care that I see flaws in it. Like, it is just so easily rewatchable. And I think partly, like, Jail kind of hit on it. Like, a lot of that movie, it is a mystery, so you should be paying somewhat attention, but like, it's like a pretty laid back is not the right word for a horror movie. I don't know. But it is. It's not something you have to like really think about too hard. That's the way I'll put it.
Yeah, I
Even
think
Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings is great, but it's not a heady movie. Like it's not. Like you're in for it for the awesome shots and the battles and but it's like you're not having to like, you know, get. I hope.
I mean,
like,
yeah, like it's not like a riddle. It's not like you have to like think super hard about like what's going on in the film. It's just a very like well told like fantasy
say
story.
friend and enter. Sorry, that's
Yeah, but I mean, like, and actually, I feel like that's kind of like related to my thoughts about it too, because I'm thinking back on The Ring, and that movie's just filled with like kind of like experiences. It's like she gets on the boat, the horses go crazy. There's the thing that happens. They go in the house. Oh, the guy is in the bathtub with the electronics. What? And it's just like, and maybe it's like after the fifth time, you're no longer going what, but at the same time, you're like, wow, that's an experience. I looked. This is an image, and kind of a fun image to watch. Do you see what I'm saying? So yeah, like, and that's what I think is the images or the senses that you like associate that you want to come back to. Those are those movies. Some movies are just not super big on that kind of thing. Maybe they're good, but like, so for example, you mentioned Wolf on Wall Street, and I still remember like some of those scenes, and they're good scenes. They're pretty compelling drama and compelling like characters doing them, but I don't associate them with like a certain like sensory kind of experience. Do you know what I mean? Like I can remember an argument between DiCaprio's character and like an FBI agent while DiCaprio was trying to bribe him or something, and that's a cool scene. It's cool, but it's not like sensory. There isn't anything like for me to grasp onto that's like, oh, I need to return to that to feel that again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Just yeah, I'd say the consensus is rewatching films is awesome, but some films are easier to rewatch than others. All movies are equal, but some are more equal than others.
I'll add one final point to this. I would be surprised if you disagree with me on this, but it's just something I want to mention. There is an exception to this in terms of rewatching a movie, in that I think that watching a movie by yourself and then watching it with like showing it to somebody, you can kind of like vicariously get that first time enjoyment by showing it to somebody. And that is a situation that I will always like rewatching a movie. Personally.
I don't, yeah, I've shown Pulp Fiction to so many people. Like more than 5. I don't think I can count on one hand, but I just remember watching that and like telling everyone, like, guys, you need to watch this movie. I'll watch it with you. I'm putting it on.
So yeah, that is the movie doesn't need to evoke any emotion. If I just think it's good and I think you'll like it, then it's like a fun thing for me to be around you enjoying something that I enjoyed. That is kind of a little separate thing. But all right, let's get into the the movie we all watched, Battle Royale. And before we talk about it, I do just want to mention that the reason we watched this movie is because it was actually a recommendation from someone who left us a comment in our YouTube channel, and that is CPT Sponko 32. I hope I am saying that right. But shout out to you, CPT Sponko 32. Thank you for the suggestion. If you have a movie suggestion that you think would be interesting for us to talk about, and you're watching us on YouTube, please leave a comment. And while you're leaving a comment, don't forget to like and subscribe. We do this every week. But with that out of the way, let's as we like to do, let's do a spoiler-free. Right, we will talk about this. It's a 20-year-old movie now.
Yeah.
We'll still have a spoiler-free section, real quick, just about kind of what your thoughts are. Because I think that even if you're not as worried about the spoilers, I think it is just it's a good exercise to be able to talk about how you feel about a movie without getting into specifics, just like very, very broadly. And so. I'll kind of, because this is a rewatch for all of us, I'll kind of ask this in 2 parts. How do you feel about the movie generally? And do you think that the second viewing of it changed your opinion at all compared to your first viewing?
So I've seen this film a few times before. This might be my fourth rewatch. I don't know, but I still, I think, liked it just as much. This well, first of all, it's a great film. It's fantastic. You should watch it. But it's also a film I think that kind of, I don't know if I want to say it reveals more, but you can get more out of a rewatch because there's a decent amount of like things or like thematic material going on in this movie. It's not just like a watch you find out, oh, like the thing at the end and it's over. There's a lot of subtext to this film. It rewards rewatches, I think.
Okay.
Oh, and also there's a director's cut and a theatrical version, so yeah.
Yes.
You gotta watch it at least twice.
So I will say, because my first watching, I saw the theatrical cut. And then this time we watched the director's cut. And this is a movie, I think, where the director's cut is pretty substantively different. Like they added a decent amount, enough that it changes how the film feels, I think. And I have to say that I think I prefer the theatrical cut, in all honesty. I don't know if I appreciated the added scenes that much, but they add context that you don't get normally. That's what a lot of director's cuts do, kind of in terms of backstory of the characters. And so it was still interesting. If I was ever to watch this movie a third time, I'm going to try to do the theatrical cut if I can. But I appreciate that I saw it. I saw this more extended version. I think I liked it when I first watched it. I think I still like it. I don't know if I would give it quite the high praise that I get. This movie is like a cult classic. People say about how amazing it is. At least as of 2009, I don't know if his opinion has changed, but at one point it was Quentin Tarantino's what he called the best movie.
Well, he said like the best movie in like the past like decade or two, I think.
That's true.
Not like just the best movie. But...
Maybe other stuff. But yeah, it is the best movie in 20 years. I mean, that's high praise. And I don't know if I would go that far personally. That it was.
Oh, I don't know if I go that far either, but.
And like even as far as like best film, I mean like maybe even like top 20, I don't think I'd go that far. But yeah, it's definitely a solid movie. It is definitely entertaining, and I think it is definitely just kind of worth watching if you are into violent movies. I think that's crucial. If you're not into violence in your movies, I'd say skip it because there's so much of that. It is. But if that is something that you appreciate, which I do, I like the, I like healthy amounts of violence and gore in films. I think it's fun. So this movie has plenty of that.
I love violence. I love like watching people get their heads like chopped off with samurai swords and blood squirting all over the place. Violence is fun, people. It's different. But I'd say in this movie, it's quite a violent film, but I don't know if I'd call the violence in this movie fun. Like, I don't watch this movie and go like, yeah. A lot of it's quite disturbing, actually. Like, it's an engaging film. Like, you certainly won't be bored. I don't know if I could call it like fun or like entertaining in the same way that like, I don't know, Superbad or Die Hard is entertaining.
I actually don't know if I agree with that. I think it kind of does play in. I mean, I understand what you mean by upsetting, in that it's not a comedy. Like, it's not meant to be a comedy.
Yeah, there's traces of black comedy here and there. But,
yeah. But I would say that the how over the top it is. Like, I don't think this is upsetting in the same way that like a very serious war movie is that has violence, right? Where like, I'm thinking of. I hope this is the movie I'm thinking of. I want to say Dunkirk. But like
Christopher Nolan film?
I think it's one of those World War.
It's a World War II
I would do
movie.
is Saving Private Ryan. Like, the violence at the beginning of that film is not fun violence, like in any way.
Actually, I think I'm thinking of 1918.
Oh, okay.
because I remember being World War I. There's a scene where this guy like crashes in a plane, and then he stabs somebody, right? And it's pretty gruesome. Like there's lots of blood and stuff, but that I would say is not fun violence. Like you're not going to have like a oh shit like. Oh. Whereas in this movie, I actually think that there are moments where like you see people just getting like just plastered by machine guns and like having a grenade in someone's mouth that's being thrown through a window. And I understand that like this stuff is supposed
I loved watching that kid just get violently murdered, Well,
you can see that about any kind of violent movie, right? Because like, okay, here's a question. Would you say that a Tarantino movie, is that violence fun or is that not fun violence? Because I get similar vibes, and I would say that a Tarantino violence is fun violence.
Well, Tarantino very like explicitly like takes some elements, from like old like exploitation. Like he wants to make his violence fun, usually, I'd say. But in Battle Royale, some of the violence is, I think, rather like tragic or horrific. There's
I don't
kind of more of a point to be made. It's not an exploitation film in the same way that like I could maybe say like Kill Bill is one, or at least like a throwback, It's speaking of Kill Bill,
has
the actress, the Japanese actress kid, she shows up in Kill Bill, and I think it's because Tarantino saw Battle Royale and just liked her and wanted to use her in his movie.
That was cool. That was a cool connection that I saw. It's like someone recognized. It's like I understand your point. I could see interpreting it that way. It's just hard for me to think that like if we're just going to talk about like the intentions of the director, the intentions of the writer, that you would have a scene, and maybe this is spoiled, maybe I shouldn't say it, but some of the stuff that they do in the movie are just so over the top that I don't know how you try to make that. I understand horrific, right? I guess this does kind of toe the line. It's a little bit less lighthearted than a Tarantino film is. It kind of borders on like a more kind of slasher kind of thing. But like even among slasher films are horrific. But I would still call the violence in those movies fun too. Right? Like
that was kind of
we're talking semantics right now, but
is that like it's kind of a horror like deaths kind of feel. But like when it's just when it's like there's a style here. I didn't get this impression that we were going for like these really like just true deaths, these like really cold.
I don't think you're supposed to be like emotionally pulling for every single death.
Right.
No, and I wouldn't say not for every single death. No,
this felt like a mature comic book, but a comic book death. All over the place, constantly. Just like here are the victims in this violent game that like these people are playing. I think it's fun. I'm kind of on that side too, and kind of to shift gears a little bit. I don't want to continue if someone else has another point to make about this.
No, please.
Okay, but kind of to shift gears. So Battle Royale, in my opinion, is kind of a certain type of film, and it's kind of interesting because I wouldn't call it a genre because the type of film that it is can have so many different styles and so many different kind of like interpretations. But it's a type of film that, believe it or not, the film that I would kind of compare it to is like Yesterday. It's the one about the guy who discovers that the Beatles didn't exist or something like that.
Actually, I
haven't seen that one.
The Lobster is actually another.
I have seen Lobster.
That I would kind of.
That's interesting. These are both interesting.
I know these are. Where am I going with this? Right. This is where I'm going with this. Where essentially the film is somebody thinks of a weird idea and runs the entire film with that idea. What would happen if you explored that idea? And I think that this is one of the very best ones because the idea is just like, maybe it's cliche now. Like every like video game is like
copied this.
I know based on this, but they all copied this. But it's a cool idea if you really take it down to its barest bones. You know, it's almost the type of thing you might daydream in class if you're bored in like, you know, high school. And so yeah, they just give you like they give a set of rules. It's just they have a setup and they run with that setup. And I think that this film really just kind of fulfills this concept that they give you to its potential. Absolutely love it. Highly recommend.
We talked a lot about like, you know, the action aspects, the violence, the premise. What about, because I mean there's a very healthy amount of like relationship drama. Actually a ton of it in this movie. Do you think that it is, you know, how do you think that really adds to the movie? Like, how did you feel about that part of it? Jill, did we lose you?
Oh.
All right, hopefully he comes back.
Yeah.
What do you think, Adam?
So the way I kind of see it is that it absolutely adds a whole bunch. It's actually part of the reason that I'm kind of on the violence is fun side. Because I can't help, and like we use the term darkly comic. I guess I might want to save some of this for the spoiler discussion a little bit later on, actually.
And welcome back. So you may have noticed that we are all suddenly wearing different clothes. So what happened was, I guess, JL, do you want to explain some of I guess the internet went out in your house.
Yeah, or my entire complex just things went haywire for a few hours. So just yeah, we the whole complex got a message saying that, oh, okay, we're working on it. It's going to take a while, but
so here we are.
Everything died.
Yeah, a few days later, an entire election happened in the meantime, in the middle of this episode, which, you know, is pretty exciting, I guess. I was excited. So yeah, that was cool. But Battle Royale.
Oh yeah.
I guess we can. Yeah, it seems like so much has happened in the last.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's this one Japanese movie where a bunch of kids are forced to kill themselves.
But I thought we could start our conversation kind of going off what we were talking about a few days ago. We were talking about director's cuts and things. And this is a director's cut that we saw.
Yeah, well, we watched the director's cut of this. Well, the director's cut, special edition, whatever, the alternate version, the non-theatrical version.
Because this one's interesting because all the director's cuts parts were filmed after the fact. So they were just added to the movie.
Well, I don't know if all of it was, but I think like at least half of it or so was, because some of like the ending scenes, for example, like the theatrical cut,
had like just multiple endings.
Yeah, because in this version there are requiems where it kind of just re-showcases scenes that you've already seen. But one of them's kind of expanded upon a dream sequence from a character earlier in the film, but I think that's the dream itself is also shown in the theatrical version. They just
added to it
the rest of it.
But I'm pretty sure all the basketball things. So they keep on coming back to this basketball game, kind of to showcase, you know, how good friends everyone is. And I guess that was all added post hoc. So my question to you, and I guess I'll just come out and say it. I do not think that the additions made the movie better. I think that it would have been better without all of that. I thought a lot of the things that they added, the high school basketball stuff, I thought that the multiple ending thing, or like the multiple, was kind of confusing as an ending and a lot less satisfying and coherent. I don't know if I appreciated that too much either. Because this is a rewatch for me, I'm glad I saw the theatrical version first, I think it's the better version. I don't mind now having seen this stuff because it's new, and so that made it kind of interesting. But if I had the choice in the future and I'm going to rewatch this again, I'd probably choose the theatrical one, personally.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Well, for anyone who's never seen the movie before, I'd recommend the theatrical version for their first watch. But at the same time, I don't think the special edition is like particularly like if that was their only option,
It's not terrible. It doesn't ruin the movie, right? It doesn't
actually. Some scenes I think are actually kind of add to the narrative. There's two choice moments in the director's cut that I actually like as an addition, but I can understand why they took them out of the theatrical version. And that's mostly one of the flashbacks. You see the crazy like lady's flashback like to when she was a kid, and you could basically tell that ever since she was like from a young age, her mom was like kind of no good and like almost like pimping her out to older dudes, and that kind of explains her like rather
or whatever.
Yeah, sociopathic state of mind. And one of the endings, the ending, I agree, I don't think is well done in the special edition, but I think because they're called requiems and there's 3 of them, but 2 of them are just like short flashbacks to scenes we've already seen in the movie, like just exactly the same. They're just flashbacks. That's it. One of them's a flashback to a dream sequence, but it kind of adds onto it.
That's with the
shows more
teacher
dialogue.
And the girl, right?
Yeah, and I actually kind of like that sequence because I think it thematically fits very well. So I like the addition of that sequence at the end, but at the same time, I don't know if they necessarily had to add it at the ending. They maybe could have just added it during the dream sequence, and it's not super necessary. It's not like a Blade Runner director's cut's necessary of editing, but I do think it fits in quite well with the thematic themes.
How did you guys...
Thematic themes, did I just say that?
As opposed to the other kinds.
How did you guys feel about the ending in terms of, like, I don't think this movie is necessarily, I don't think it does hold up to intense scrutiny in terms of like what makes sense. I don't think it needs to.
No,
I don't think every little thing needs to make sense.
There are certainly plot holes.
Right. Like the fact that, it was a big media event, right? Like everyone was filming the first person when the first girl survived at the beginning, and yet no one in the class has any idea of what this is. And like,
yeah, none of the kids know about it. And the fact that the entire program is like, meant to like curb like,
delinquency or something.
Yeah, teenage delinquency, but like, well,
how
did you tell your kids about it? Like, what did that scare them? None of them know. Yeah, that's like the huge plot hole in this movie, but I can forgive it.
Matters, right? Yeah, it's not really what you watch it for. But how did you feel about the ending? Like the relationship between the teacher and the girl who survives. Because one thing I thought was kind of weird is that at the beginning, you would never know that there was a relationship or that there was any kind of special feelings. It was only, and it's totally by happenstance that she happened to survive. Not like he was pulling the strings the whole time. But at the very, very end, it's like, oh, I always knew she would be her. Which maybe it's just a coincidence and who cares. But it's just something I noticed.
Yeah, I don't think he was like, he wasn't like, it wasn't a sure shot that she would survive, I think, in his eyes, but he was, I think, maybe subtly manipulating the events so that that would be the conclusion. But I think there's some very, very gentle foreshadowing at the beginning of their like relationship, because you see the one scene where she shows up to class and she's the only one, and then you find out that the rest of the class has said, "Oh, we're not showing up today." So
she
yeah,
was
like
the girl
very
with the knife too. I don't know, like it was just she was the girl with the knife at the very beginning when he gets stabbed. she's the one who picks up the knife, and
Oh yeah, and like
so there's like
hides it,
right,
which
is just together screen time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like it happens like right after I think she shows up for class and she finds out that the rest of the class is playing hooky. Yeah. And also like the scene with her and him like, you know, like on the like river stream like eating ice cream together. Like we don't even know if that actually happened. It doesn't seem like it happened because she says like, "Oh, I had a dream about him."
Oh, was the dream supposed to be her dream? I thought it was supposed to be his dream.
Maybe it's both of their dreams. No, but I think she explicitly says at the point, like, or at one point in the movie, like, she, like, wakes up right after, and she's like, oh, I had a dream about, you know, the teacher.
Yeah, I think that, and this is kind of, I guess, a criticism of both versions of the film, though I think maybe it's slightly stronger with this version, or it's more pronounced with this version because of what they added, is that it one of the things that makes like tension work in a story is the buy-in that we have for the characters. Like when the story does a lot of work to set up a character and we follow them for a long time, then we care more about what happens to them, right? And often, and even if we get the information before, like maybe a character dies or something like that, often throughout this film, it just feels like the kind of the writing is such that they didn't want to do the work to make us care about these characters, so instead they just show us a thing really quickly. It's like, here's maybe a reason to care, and then they die. You know what I mean?
But I mean, at the same time, how many deaths are in this movie? How hard would it have been to make you care
Aren't there like
about
42
every
kids?
single one of them?
Right. And I feel like if you want to accomplish that task, this needs to be like a TV show, not like a film, right? So like I don't know, and that's maybe part of the reason I recall that we were having a conversation before
violence, or
where we were talking about how fun is the violence, and I think that maybe part of the reason that I thought of this violence as more fun than I guess disturbing is just because I didn't believe in it. You know, I didn't believe in the importance of like these characters, I guess, and I say that like it's bad, it's not important that people die, but I mean that like in storytelling, especially in violent storytelling, then we have to be shown kind of who we care about, you know, in film, and in this movie that does happen for the main characters. So the attempt to try to make us care about all the characters, I just think kind of comes across as silly, and then like the violence is fun. You know.
Well, I don't know if they were trying to make us care about all of the characters. Like,
okay, sure.
For me, some of the violence was still shocking, even though we didn't necessarily know the characters. For example, the first death in the movie, which is when the actually before the games even start, they're just watching the video.
Throws the
teen, and he just he tells the kid to shut up. They won't shut up, and he just like kills them. Like he just throws the knife in their head. Like. It's very just sudden and out of the blue. Huh?
You didn't find any comedy in that?
Oh, there's actually, that's what I think's so great about it. There is kind of some black comedy in it, but it's also like, holy fuck! Like the teacher just like killed like a kid. Like,
no, fair enough. Before your internet cut out, me and Adam were talking about how. Because there's kind of two parts to this movie, right? There's like the violence element, and then there's the teenage romance element, which is actually really big. There's like so many different star-crossed lovers and things, and it's like a central theme. And we were talking about how, to us, it kind of seems that made it all the more comical that you're in this life and death situation, and the thing you care about is boys or, you know, girls or whatever.
There's a scene in particular that I think of when it comes to that kind of thing, and it's specifically the scene where like the girls there's like a group of girls survivors and they save this boy, right? and then they all end up killing each other because of like one of them tries to point. It's just, I'm sorry, it's just like and this is born from like high school kind of like drama, and so like
well, yeah, they're high schoolers,
right? And so the this drama writ large in blood, you know, is like. I think it's amusing. It's like I don't know. I can't like shake the sense of like I don't know, like levity in even though it's dark, you know.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I guess, yeah, just that scene in particular has always stuck with me, like ever since I first saw the movie, just because I don't know, it's really sad, like at the end of the day, because I think this is just part of the fact that so the world of Asian cinema, melodrama is like cranked up to like 11, like it's just at the forefront, like emotions are like crazy, you know, they spill it all out. It's like anime's not like that out there.
Okay, because this reminded me of a live action anime, kind of, in a lot of ways. That being one of the most ones is that the emphasis on like the high school romance is something that I kind of, and maybe it's just because I don't watch that much, you know, Japanese live action movies. Maybe that's.
I mean, I think emphasis there on like everyone like, you know, talking about their like crushes or who they're into is just to like kind of reinforce the fact that they're kids.
Yeah,
they're like literally like 14 years old. And
I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it made the movie more enjoyable that you put that element into it.
Yeah, same.
But I totally did kind of, you know, I imagine there must be some self-awareness of like how kind of ridiculous it is to be.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean,
the whole movie's kind of ridiculous. So.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I just think it's like good juxtaposition. It's like 14 years old talking about their crushes. It's like, oh, and then like the next moment, like they literally have to like
shot up with a nude
like
or something.
brutally like murder each other.
Yeah. What did you guys say? Because I remember reading a lot about this. Do you think there was like some kind of deeper meaning, or what? And if there was, what do you think it was? Well, do you think it's in the eye of the beholder, or do you think like the filmmaker was trying to make a message?
Well, absolutely. I think he's gone on record stating his intentions. Well, at least some of them. Like, so for example, the filmmaker was actually quite old when he made this movie. I think he died just a few years after.
Yeah, I think this is his last
But
one.
there's a quote for him talking about when he was like 15 or so during like World War II, like him and his like fellow kids like had to like work for a munitions company, and like one day they were like just like bombed and bombarded and like a ton of people died, and he saw that and he talked about how he just like lost a ton of trust in like the government after that moment.
This had like strong anti-government vibes. There is definitely a healthy disrespect of the government, which I mean is making teenagers kill each other, so probably worth being against. But that's a good point.
Yeah. But also, I think what stands out more to me is I think the divide between the older generation and the younger generation. Like, this is actually kind of the original OK Boomer movie, I think.
Okay.
Because the character of the teacher, Kintaro, I think's his name, not sure. But I think to me, he represents like the failures of the older generation and their inability to communicate and understand the younger generation. And basically just them taking out their frustrations upon the younger generation because they can't cope with it themselves. Because I mean, the character himself, he has a strained relationship, I think, with his wife and daughter. Doesn't get along with them. Obviously, the kids don't like him. He doesn't like the kids. Which isn't to say that necessarily the kids are bad, because earlier in the movie you see them with their like newer teacher and they're getting along just fine. And he has that newer teacher killed and said, oh, he's a failure as an adult.
Yeah.
Well, why? He seemed to be doing a better job than you. You just seem, angry that you couldn't do it yourself. And at the very end of the film, at least in the special edition, like literally the last words is him saying, "What do I as an adult say to a kid at a moment like this?" Like, it's about the disconnect between, the older generation and the younger, which wasn't in the book. That character isn't. He's kind of in the book, but he's very, very different. So I think the filmmaker was like very much trying to go for that.
Have you read the book?
Yeah, I read the book a couple years ago and watched the movie along or right after. The book is pretty good too. It's certainly a worthwhile read. But I will think this is one of those instances where I prefer the movie slightly more because of those changes. Actually, I liked what the movie is going for.
I picked on I felt kind of a slightly different theme, but I actually think it builds off the theme that you're talking about, because I think everything you're saying is true. And I think that everything you're saying is valid based on the evidence in the film, for sure. I felt like another message that maybe the movie was kind of trying to give essentially is that the things that like kids care about, that like teenagers care about, do matter. That because there's kind of and I know that this is, again, it's like I feel kind of like weirdly conflicted, because I thought that part of the reason this movie was like kind of like amusing in some way is because of the way that this extreme violence was like juxtaposed with these kind of like teen like school drama, right? But I think that maybe the movie was kind of like making a statement like to kids, these things matter. They matter a lot, right? And just because you're like maybe you grow up and think different things matter to you in the future doesn't mean that those things weren't like life and death to you when you were a kid, right? And so like I felt like the movie was doing kind of this interesting thing where they were making it like life and death for the kids, but I think it's kind of like related to that. It's like maybe when you're an adult, you start to kind of lose the perspective that you have when you're a kid, because it may feel like your high school like romances are like the whole of your world at that time. But the movie doesn't try to take this kind of patronizing thing. It's like, but you grow out of it. Instead, the movie kind of takes a patronizing thing, like the way that you felt then really mattered. It was important, those feelings you had.
Yeah, and actually, kind of going along that, it's as life and death, obviously that makes things important, but the whole thing is so kind of like ridiculous that like the government is just making people murder each other, and it's like, why? Well, like maybe it's something about delinquency. Like that's almost more meaningless, right? Like really, they had their eye on like what really mattered. The kids did, and it was the adults who were totally like lost in the woods and like didn't know what was up or down, which I think kind of plays up with the the kind of anti-government, anti-war message that you were hitting on. That like you could make the argument that most of the wars are like that, and everyone's just losing sight of what matters, and they're just getting involved in these things that aren't real in the way that a young love is.
Yeah, this this movie, it's got some shit going for it. Like, and I think I said this before in our last talk, but yeah, I think it actually rewards like a couple rewatches. Like it's just not like a surface level like, oh, kids killing kids, ooh, what fun, baby. It's not just that.
Well, all right. I think we'll leave it at that. We're going to end the way that we usually do with going around what we've been watching. I will start because I finally watched The Lighthouse at the recommendation of this podcast.
Yes.
You know, so you guys were telling me how great it was, so I gave it a watch. It reminded me of The Witch in a lot of good ways. I think of it's A24.
Yeah.
Studio?
That's the studio, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same director as The Witch, Robert Eggers.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I think of the A24 films I've seen so far, this has been my least favorite. But that is a
Dude, you're such a pussy. Oh my god.
That is, I was about to say, that is a very, very high bar. Because what I'm thinking, that's The Witch, Hereditary, and what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Oh, Midsummer.
Midsummer,
Like,
yeah.
Those are all such good movies that I think that I don't know if I like this quite as much as those, but I did like it quite a bit.
And I definitely
Very,
know
very
you've seen other A24 movies. Like, they're fairly big. Like, all the good stuff's on there, I feel like. At least
good. Oh, maybe there is stuff I'm just haven't
like
thought
It
of yet.
Follows, I think, might be A24.
Is that them?
Is Bob
Oh,
good
wow.
with
Well, I mean,
them?
they're just a distribution company, I think. But yeah.
Well, maybe I'd have to reevaluate. I thought it was just the 4, but I'll have to look into that more.
No, there's a ton of stuff on A24, I think, that you recognize. I'd have to look at the list again, but
Well, then maybe that wouldn't be true then if I looked at the full list. I'm not sure, but it was very, very good. The acting was great. I think the way you guys described it was does a really good job making you feel crazy, and it definitely does that. So I would also add to its praise, I guess. I'd give it thumbs up.
also one of the best monologues, I think, in film ever. When Robert Pattinson criticizes Willem Dafoe's cooking.
Yes, lobster
He
is
just
an
goes
even-
off on it. It's so-
Okay, it's pretty good.
The way he gets so worked up about the lobster, like he's like listening to everything. He's like, "But I know you like the lobster. Like, I know."
It's great.
All right, what about you guys? Anything? Just the news.
So, I mean, I guess technically since the last time I watched a thing, Halloween passed. And so I figured I'd watch a movie for that. And believe it or not, I had never seen Halloween before, the original slasher. But I watched it for the first time. And it was really, really good. Like, I was...
Hell yeah, it is.
Yeah, I was just absolutely impressed with what they did with such a limited set. It's honestly like not a short movie, and it takes place over like 2 houses essentially. With like it's a little bit more varied in the beginning, but for the most part, it's essentially 2 houses and what happens between these 2 houses, and it is it's so effective. There's like a whole bunch of creative ways to like show what threat is coming in the movie.
What do you think of the soundtrack?
The soundtrack obviously is classic and super fun. And I think one of the major things is that surprised me is because I've actually seen quite a few 80s slasher films, which obviously all good. And I was just surprised like how much better Halloween is than them. And so
Dude,
it's like
so
why
much
didn't you just
better.
take all of like what Halloween was doing? Because like Halloween is just like it seems like they took maybe the wrong lesson from that movie. But yeah, absolutely great film. Highly recommend it.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine like growing up on a diet of like bullshit 80s slasher films and then watching Halloween and just going like, oh, wait, this is an actual movie. There's actual craft in here.
Speaking of terrible like slasher films, just really quick, because on Halloween I also saw something. I saw the remake of Child's Play,
Oh.
which is the worst thing I have seen in a long time. It was so bad.
Really?
I
I thought I heard it wasn't that bad.
I liked it. I actually liked it. And I can explain
remake?
why. I'm not going to go into it. I liked it.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Now I have to watch it now with these.
Oh, jeez.
I actually liked it.
I mean, maybe in like a really corny way, I suppose.
You have to get on its vibe. Like it's,
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a movie that just in terms of pure just like storytelling ability works It totally does. It's not like the concept is really bad. It's not like the plot points are completely like they don't feel out of place for the tone the movie set whatsoever. I don't know. I felt like it just worked with the standards that it set at the very early on. I thought it was a good movie, but
Okay.
And I've seen
Fair
both.
enough.
I actually like the newer one more.
Wow.
Whoa, damn.
All right. I feel like because I haven't seen the original, and watching this one made me want to watch the original just to compare them. And so now I have to. I have to see what exactly I'll be getting myself into. I don't know.
Yeah. As someone who once watched 4 Child's Play movies in one day once, I feel like I might like this one. I don't know.
You might.
All right. Anything, Jalen?
I watched a couple things this week. Probably the biggest standout being the new SpongeBob movie.
Is it good?
Because I don't think that's actually even out in the States yet. But I know internationally it just got released on Netflix a few days ago. And it's fine. I mean, I think at this point you know what you're getting into. If you're watching the third SpongeBob SquarePants, you're quite aware of what you're doing. It's not like fantastic. It's not like levels of like the first SpongeBob movie, which I actually think is amazing. But it's enjoyable. There's actually some real fun scenes in this movie. So yeah, I mean, like I said before, you know what you're getting at this point. If you hear the words third SpongeBob movie, and you want to see it, then yeah, check it out. And I also watched, I think yesterday, I finally watched the 80s classic, The Big Chill, which is a Lawrence Kasdan film, but it's basically a bunch about a bunch of like 30-somethings who are all friends in college, and they get together like years later because their like friend committed suicide, and it's just a bunch of 30-somethings sitting around drinking wine and smoking pot and talking about how much adult life sucks, and then sleeping with each other at the end of the movie. Let's not forget.
There is a narrative.
It was fine. I think I kind of understand the reputation it has. Like in terms of movies where people are just like just sitting around and doing drugs and talking, Dazed and Confused is a much better movie. But this one is okay. It like informed me just like, oh, like adults really aren't, like, they're dumbasses. They don't know what they're doing either. Yeah, it's a good movie to watch for kids. You should watch it as a teen just to like lose like some more faith in the older generation.
All right, well, that's going to be it for us this week. Thank you for listening. Please give us a like, subscribe, follow. You've heard it all before. And until next time.
All right. Take it easy, everybody.